The lights in Viveka's lab flicker, even though the backup batteries show stable power level. Nevenek questions, do the indicators lie? Or does his brain? The visual alterations were always on his side, but they came from within him, and it's not an outlandish concept that with him losing his grip, the illusions will become unstable as well. His mother's terminal doesn't even launch fully, when hurried steps echo through the corridor outside. Nevenek turns towards the door, as if he is readying to face a reckoning of some kind. Once again, he must try to remember that the colony is not just a danger to the field, but also to the people who need it to live. Forgetting that blinds him, forgetting that makes him feel as if it's just the field and himself. It is not. Nevene! It's Agave. She walks alone again, but she walks fast and her voice is quivering. She finds him without an issue following the trail of lit lamps. She enters the lab and looks at him. Her face changes, and he knows she means to say something he cannot hear right now. So he stops her before she has a chance to speak. He says, "I know." He doesn't. He will ignore her eyes trailing over his face, following the light that's spreading upwards, escaping the calming cover of his collar. No one else entered the field. She lets him know instead, accepting his statement. But I have. Her eyes now land on the flower Nevenek still clutches in his hand. She expects him to speak and give answers to obvious questions, but he doesn't have any just yet. So he stands there waiting for... There is nothing to wait for. It's just him. Him alone. The silence of the once ever-buzzing lab makes it all the more crushing. "Is it killing you?" she asks, as he has nothing to offer but silence. "Will it kill us?" "No," he replies at once. He speaks with conviction, and this is the only moment he can do so, because once the meaning of Agave's question reaches him, it will be too late. Agave exhales sharply through her nose, and Nevenek is under impression she's trying to play a game here, plan her next move, next thing she can say. And he's glad she's doing that, because at this moment, it would take little to break him. If they see the flowers are blighted, they will be terrified and in fear. They may destroy them. You cannot let that happen. He tells Agave and reaches out the dead flower he holds as if it could tell her everything he can't put into words. Your skin looks the same, Nevenek, she whispers, barely audible. Maybe this is the something she decided not to say, yet the rogue tongue spoke anyway. And you've breathed in the mist. The flowers and I share a gene, he says. A logical explanation, and a calming one to anyone but him. It only affects me. It's not a lot, but it's enough. Agave has no other option but to accept it. To rush the colony back underground is a thought she, in turn, cannot handle just yet. And so they part, each with their own unspoken promise. Keep it a secret and solve the mystery. Viveka's computer was protected by a password. Nevenek brushed his fingers across the input panel, tracing the multitude of available symbols, letters, numbers, signs. Bullied children rejected by their peers often took the cruel words they heard and made them their own, repeated them as self-destructive mantras, until they believed they were worthless. Nevene had never done that. He knew he was more important to the colony than any of the other kids. The miracle baby with the miracle gene. They're a blip, son, irrelevant and unimportant, and so is their gibbering. He had to know the password. Viveka pulled him into her life, into this project. He was a part of it. Without him, it wouldn't be here at all. So he had to know the password. He grabbed the backrest of the chair, intending to sit down, but didn't follow through. The terminal screen displayed a solitary dot fading in and out in the center of the screen. Useless. He closed his eyes. Think. He had never used this computer. It was the one thing in the laboratory his mother had always kept him away from. In subtle ways, as she always did, she simply made sure he never felt it was something he wanted to touch. But he had to know the password. For the day he needed it. For today. It had to be written down somewhere. On a piece of paper or on a memory. He was her son. The field belonged to the both of them. He would not believe otherwise. Many would try to type in random words related to anything at all meaningful in Viveka's life, but Nevene knew his mother better than that. Instead of wasting time on that pointless endeavor, he started to toss the laboratory, looking for something that would ring a bell, kickstart a train of thought. Because he knew the password. All he needed to do was find it in his own head. Fast. Mom, please trust me. He whispers to his own journals, scattered across the floor of the laboratory. He holds them all in, growing desperate for the elusive clue. Written memories are more persistent and truthful compared to what is left in his brain. If there is a word, a sentence, a sequence with a special meaning, it might be hidden within these notebooks. But at the back of his mind looms an ocean, dark and pleasant, reminiscent of slimy tentacles reaching through a crevice in your dream, pushing open the doorway to a nightmarish realm you're terrified to visit. What if there's nothing in here? What if he doesn't know the code? He stops the frantic skimming of the pages to read some entries in full. He finds solace and hope in the way he describes his mother and their work. It's almost like she's here again, by his side, her lies still unknown. Typing away on her computer, muttering words to Nevene he tries to remember to understand her better. Her mind rarely follows a straight line, and she appreciates it when she doesn't have to go back and explain trivial ideas to him. Her surprise at his quick wit makes him happy. He misses that feeling. Many of these mutterings are noted down in his notebooks too, but none of them stick out. The futility of the journals isn't lost on Nevene. He had spent half his life chronicling it, yet the 2 times he went back to the books, they've been useless. You do not only dwell on the past now, son. You're actively producing these tools to drag you back there on demand. It's unwise. It's your immortality, mother, he says in response to the memory echoing in his mind. He hears anger reverberate in his voice. It's surprising and catches him off guard. His emotions too distant to realize what he's feeling, too muffled by the growing fear. He is angry. He is furious, actually. Why doesn't he know the password? Why hadn't she told him? She needed him for this. He was the miracle. He contributed so much, he gave up so much, and she locked him out, kept him away as she'd done with the colony? Was the field her gift given to him from high above, a benevolent present and nothing more. He wants to refuse to believe it, but the dark tentacles are pushing in harder. The door begins to creak. There is one more journal, hidden underneath the old bookcase, right here in the lab. That one's more a diary than a journal, actually, and it's one Nevene never meant to return to. It's filled with his anger and disappointment, with regrets and anything bad he ever felt towards his mother. It could be a twist worthy of Viveka if the password was hidden somewhere in those memories. And if that was the game she had played, then perhaps she deserved that journal to be read again. Nevene sits down by the closet and pushes it back, revealing both his old drawings on the wall and the thin forgotten book. He reaches for it, and then stops. The flickering lamplight dims, and he looks down at his forearm, covered in brown spot scars. Bigger, smaller, all glowing faintly in the darkness, and getting brighter as his eyes focus on them and tune out the surrounding room. The vaccines were unpleasant, some more painful than others. To make it more bearable for a child, Viveka paid for each one with a story about a star wanderer exploring the constellations surrounding her homeworld. The twins! What a painfully obvious name, the star wanderer thought as he reached his first destination. No wonder the place is so devoid of mystery and intrigue, it became a tourist hotspot. It's funny, Viveka explained, because stars are actually really, really hot. Melt your face hot. Only face? Nevene asked as he grabbed onto his own. No, melt your everything. It was a figure of speech. Oh, that's bad. So, where did he go next? He went many places next. Nevene rolls up his sleeves and draws a line between the two glowing scars above his left wrist. Below, the four formed a misshapen square, a kicked square as the star wanderer called the constellation he headed for next. Then 7 on the top of the forearm, the blight, doesn't reach here at all. Not yet. 5 above, Nevene connects them 2 and adds the number. A constellation of 3, such a disappointment, a shorter adventure, was at the end of the first set. Then a black hole. That's not scientifically accurate, but I liked this part of the story when I was a child, so... Viveka said. Yeah, it's so cool. I want to get sucked into a black hole too. No, you don't, son. I know what I want. 3 and 3, accompanied by a 2 and 4 on the top. Then the epic 8. And then the lonely one, the last one. After that, Viveka cut out the patch of the skin from Nevene's leg. Well, what's the story for this one? He asked her. She barked a laugh. He was 15. He pulls back the bookcase, leaving the anger diary forgotten as it should be. He walks to the computer and puts in the numbers. Password accepted. Thank you, he whispers, then sighs and adds. But how unnecessary, Mother.